Hi there everyone, this week we're taking a look at 5 reasons why I wish I could but can't accept Christianity, and today we're looking at the subject of I wish I could but can't accept Christianity because the Bible promotes slavery. Now this is a big subject, it's a complex subject, it's a highly emotive subject like all the things that we'll be looking at this week. The subject is complex, we have to be careful in how we define slavery. And we mustn't assume that the systems of slavery in ancient times were necessarily the same as those in the African American slave trade. The Bible is able to instruct someone in how to live under a social structure without necessarily condoning that social structure itself. You could imagine a situation where a Christian might explain to another Christian how to conduct themselves during a war, even if they didn't agree with the war itself. It's worth us looking at the Old Testament first and comparing the Old Testament's teaching regarding slavery with other systems of slavery. So under the Old Testament's teaching, were slaves permitted holidays? Yes, they were. Under the Roman system, no they weren't. Under the New World system, yes they were. Under the Old Testament's teaching, were slaves permitted enough food, legal redress and sexual protection? Yes, they were. In the Roman system and the New World system, no, they weren't permitted those things. In the Old Testament's teaching, were slaves allowed to be kidnapped, put in chains, tortured or physically abused? No, they were not allowed. That was not allowed to happen to them. What about the Roman system and the New World system? Well, the Roman system and the New World system allowed slaves to be kidnapped, put in chains, tortured and physically abused. So you see, the Old Testament compares quite well to the other systems of slavery. But in the Old Testament itself and on into the New Testament, what we find is the raw ingredients for ending the slave trade. All sorts of different biblical texts and themes that people used as raw ingredients, ammunition if you like, to bring about the end of the slave trade. Teachings about kidnapping, teachings about slavery and slaves themselves, teachings about the dignity and equality that is there between all people, something we thought about yesterday and in other videos as well. The idea of unity between people who'd come to know Jesus, teachings on loving your neighbour, and many other teachings built up to form these raw ingredients, these tools, this ammunition which enabled the ending of the slave trade. William Wilberforce, the MP who fought for the abolition of the slave trade, fought for many years, breaking his own physical health in the process, and eventually won that battle. Well, William Wilberforce was an evangelical Christian, and he fought that battle because he was driven by his biblical Christian principles, beliefs and convictions to oppose the slave trade. Now, sometimes people say, oh, well, it wasn't all about Wilberforce, lots of other people were involved. And of course, it wasn't all about him. He was a very significant figure. But who were this circle of people around Wilberforce? Well, the circle of people around Wilberforce were the Clapham sect. And the Clapham sect also fought that battle and many other battles for social reforms at the time. And they were made up of people who were either evangelical Christians or those with a broadly Christian worldview. So you see, Christianity opposed the slave trade very firmly and brought about an end to it. If you want to look at the whole subject of contemporary slavery and trafficking and things like that, why not take a look at International Justice Ministry?